All right, Groovesters, Groove Stars, Ridgely here. Super excited to have a gentleman who you are going to love to hear from because he does some very cool stuff for a lot of very cool people. Calls himself a luxury lifestyle specialist, founder of Lugos Travel, and a guy who makes people's dreams come true. And I just love that. I want everybody to welcome my good friend Shane Mahoney. Shane, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. Man, what's it like to just make people's dreams come true all the time and do that for a living? That's got to be super cool.
Thank you, Ridgely. I must admit to loving my job quite profusely. It's funny that you halfway mentioned a possible new tagline we were going. We'll battle test with your audience, and it's transforming dreams into memories.
I love that. Transforming dreams into memories. So, in essence, your company puts together these amazing trips that are all personalized, customized to make a dream a reality for the people who have this vision. Wow, I could go to Europe. I could go to the South Pacific. I could go to some other place. And how did it all start?
It started because I think I had noticed some trends in my life. And so when I was in college, I had tons of time and no money. And then I got my career job and I had tons of money and no time, right? And so now you start doing this dance of like, which one do I value more? How does it work? What do you do? And, the reality is, I found myself in a position where I felt like I was like most Americans. I was living for the weekend, and it was roughly 2 weeks of vacation for 52 weeks of the year. So you're kind of like, what do I do? Where am I going to go? How am I going to spend it? How much am I going to spend? Like all this like stress, because the honest reality is everybody thinks of vacations as like the best thing ever, and they are. But the reality is there is a fair amount of stress in almost every level of the pre-planning stage. And so ultimately you asked, how did I get started? Really simply, I wanted to take my love of travel that I had been doing most of my life and take the lessons that I had learned by being in corporate America and say, what can I do to make this the least stressful, most fun process that people can enjoy the memory of going on the trip and not having any hassles. And I just started putting those things together. And admittedly, over 12 years, it took me a while to stir the soup in the right way, I guess. But I feel like what we have right now is just I was just it's honestly the best experience that I can possibly imagine for buying travel, bar none.
And what's it like? 'Cause I've had this burning question for you. Knowing you were going to come on, I just wanted to ask this question was, what must it be like for you to have so many families and individuals just come back like, Shane, you just made our whole life. It was the most incredible thing. That's got to be amazingly rewarding.
It's thank you. It is. It's I deal with happy people, which is admittedly makes my life a lot happier as well. Um, we get to create the memories that people are going to have for the rest of their lives. And I can tell you that I have known to the minute sometimes when I was going to get a text that saying thank you, like that person. I know to some degree, like me and my team, we know exactly when you're going to be surprised with something that you didn't expect on your tour, and that only helps to create a better memory. And all of it is because I want to create moments that people can connect with the people they came with. Like
Mhm.
if um if there's anything that underpins everything that we do, it's that I want connection.
Mhm. Yeah, amazing. So in building this, uh, in your mind, going from that corporate space into the entrepreneurial space, what do you think are the top couple of characteristics of a successful entrepreneur? Knowing we all had to go through whatever we had to go through.
I mean, right off the bat, perseverance is key. If you have to genuinely, like, deep down care so much about what you're doing that that when things go south or tough times rear their ugly heads, you've got to have a stiff backbone to be able to, like, see it through. I think that's probably the number one thing that I would say. But I love how Arnold Schwarzenegger says, ignore the naysayers, because there's so many of them. They're probably in your family, and to be all the way real with everybody who's listening to this, there are going to be moments where you're going to do something stupid, and those naysayers will be 100% right, and ignore that too, because ultimately, like, a couple of, like, really cool quotes really sustain me. Things like, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. That's one way of looking at things. But to counteract that, I would also add another favorite quote of mine, which is, if you're working on a problem that can be solved in your lifetime, you're thinking too small. And
Yeah,
so, like, it's having this grand vision anchored by practical knowledge that it's not going to be easy.
I love that, man. I love that. So, in that regard, I know there have been moments, there have been things that have happened that were colossal setbacks, or at least very challenging setbacks. Share one with us and what you took away from it, if you don't mind.
I mean, have you heard of COVID?
I knew you were going to say that.
I don't want to say that one. I'm trying to skip over that. It's just the most freshly opened wound. Yeah, let's see. This is probably the most cogent piece of information that an entrepreneur listening could tack on to, is allow yourself some grace when you mess up, because you will, and work really hard on your apology and making it up game. Because I think I grew up a perfectionist. I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but, like, my wife grew up a perfectionist. The difference is, while my wife is still a perfectionist, I have basically cultivated a sense of forgiveness for myself, because to ignore the human condition that is to make mistakes is to set yourself up for your own suffering. I think, Ridgely, you're a practicing Buddhist. I think you'll cotton to this. I try to avoid any scenario in which I'll be punishing myself, because the world is punishing enough. You don't need to be living in your brain telling yourself that you're not good enough. The voice in your head should be the most positive one of all. I actually, this is totally off topic. I probably shouldn't say this, but I practiced my first road rageless action the other day. And I know I just made that up. It doesn't make sense. But suffice to say that box truck and a car were trying to occupy a lane in front of me at the exact same time with no blinkers, and I had to slam on the brakes. And so my first reaction was one of road rage, I think, where I was just like, these unbelievable people. And then I realized that I had an opportunity to reframe so that I didn't live with the negativity of what people who genuinely are not thinking about me might have been doing. And so I reframed it as this, and I said, thank you for sending those two people in front of me to teach me a powerful lesson to pay closer attention on the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. I remember, since I learned about Buddhism in LA, and LA is the traffic capital of the universe, and it is like horrendous all the time. And every time I go back there, I get reminded of why I left. I remember that I went from body language, sign language with fingers, to screaming, to every time somebody would cut me off, I would just say a little prayer for them. Reframe that. You're probably having a harder day than I am. Just move on down the road, and that kind of path, which is nice because it feels a lot better. That's for sure. So, talk to us for a second, Shane, about what has mentorship meant for you in your growth in your career, and how do you feel about that for the young entrepreneurs?
I love this question. Mentorship is so important, and and I think at any given moment you should probably try to be both a mentor and a mentee. Being able to go up to somebody who's way out of your league and be like, hey, you're way out of my league, but I'd like to learn from you, and if you're willing to teach me, I'm willing to listen to whatever you have to say. But then also being able to recognize that there are certain people that you can help, and that, like, their business practices, their intention is good, but their business practices are lacking, and to the degree that you can help, it's great. I mean, I've probably stupidly taught my house cleaner company how to do so much of a better job that I've actually increased my own rate. But it was worth it because, they needed to know they were grossly undercharging and for what they were doing, and just knowing that, like, the difference isn't going to put me in a position, I might as well set them up to be able to be in a much better position overall so that they can grow and hopefully be my house cleaner for a long time.
And hopefully appreciate the fact that you helped them out like that. That's great. I love that.
Yeah.
And so, on a sideline to that, what about the value of self-directed? In other words, the things that you do for yourself, personal development, personal growth, the reading the books, the listening to podcasts. How important is that to the young entrepreneur?
Go with what you're good at. It's really important, but I'm not the most voracious reader. Even though I like reading, I'm just a slow reader. So for me to do it as a podcast or a book where I can do it at 2x speed works better for me, because I can then also be, getting my exercise in, taking a walk and doing stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Get it in where you can fit it in, but but at the same time, I mean, just realize that it's absolutely essential to to being a leader. I think it's more foundationally about realizing you're not the smartest guy and you shouldn't try to be. You should just be, like, continually humble and trying to figure out the next best move, which, it's like what we were talking about earlier with AI. It's like, I know I've been talking to other people in my industry and I'm like, are you using this? And they're like, no. And I'm like, you should. Like, you will be so surprised, but, like, learning the new tricks
Mm-hmm.
is essential, because otherwise I think at some level you're giving up, and your psyche will realize that you're giving up, and you'll lose that edge, you'll lose that fervor to learn, you'll lose eventually everything.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about that. What is your take on AI and the importance of AI for us business people, entrepreneurs moving forward?
It's like, my dad just got an iPhone. He had a flip phone forever. He's old. And he and I were in the car, and he was describing to me how it does things he doesn't intend it to do. And I suggested that he check out the Tips app that gives him some easy tips on how to use his phone. And he gave me the I don't have time. He's retired. He has time. So what he didn't have was a motivation, right? And I think the way I described it was, I was like, look, sometimes you need a hammer and sometimes you need a saw. But if you're holding a hammer that also can become a saw and you never find out about it, whose fault is it that you don't have the saw?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got to take an active interest in learning what the tools are around you. And I think what's daunting about right now is that so much is changing on a weekly basis, you know, from which plugins to use, which not to use, which AI to use, which one not to use. Do I become a, you know, Power Pro member or do I not? You know, there's all these decisions that happen. And so probably one of the most interesting concepts that I would have any entrepreneur dig into is decision fatigue, knowing a little bit about that and how that's going to affect you so that you can protect your own space. And just kind of like thinking about it from the perspective of like not only what is happening to you, but what are you also inflicting on your customers and your people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had the tough conversation with my team. It wasn't really tough because we're already all doing it, but I basically wanted to establish a precedent that said, look, if we want to be as good as we can possibly be, we have to continue learning. So please understand that AI is a mandatory use tool at this company. And if you're not willing to use AI, let us please help you find a place where you're going to be more comfortable, because there's just no room here for somebody who rejects the concept itself, if not even the tool, but the concept of I want to improve, I want to become more efficient, I want to become quicker, more able, etc. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I love, this is like my favorite question. So my favorite question is, if you had a time warp, click, and you could pop back 20 or 25 years and speak to the Shane Mahoney of 20 or 25 years ago, and this is not an acceptable answer, by the way. Oh, I'm good where we are. I love the whole journey. Everything was beautiful. That's not an acceptable answer. Okay. What would you, based on what you know now, what you've been through, what would you want to say to that younger Shane of 20, 25 years ago?
Hands down, I would say don't try to conform to what everybody else. Like, I think I spent a lot of time conforming to norms and standards that, you know, in and of themselves, there's absolutely not one thing wrong with them. There's tons of people that are following those same ones and they should be, and everything is cool and that's great. Just wasn't my path. You know, I think I would have told myself to, you know, it's the stuff you kick yourself about, right? In college, 25 years ago, I was a senior in college, and my marketing class had developed a senior project where we had basically invented like a local website that conglomerated bars, calendars, you know, like events, stuff that's like just positively gigantic today, but just did not exist at all. And, you know, because I graduated and got a real job, I didn't pursue this little project that I had already seen garner some success and might have someday been, you know, some unicorn exit. But you know, that's the thing, right? Is there's definitely an opportunity cost to not knowing what direction you want to go. And the 25-year-old or 20-year-old Shane had no idea what he wanted to do. So any direction was better than no direction. So I actually do not regret any of the things that happened. But if I had to say, I would convince that kid to go after it a little harder.
I'm so with you, man. Who doesn't have one of those? If I coulda, woulda, you know?
Oh, I mean, I think on par with like Yahoo, like the early
Mhm.
Yahoo, where it was like communities and like, oh, we would have been dancing all over stuff like that.
Oh man. So give us three books or specific resources that you would recommend to all young entrepreneurs, whether that's young in age or young in entrepreneurship, that have been helpful to you or that you really feel would be helpful to them.
I'm gonna try to go with ones that most of your audience doesn't say. So I'm not gonna say Think and Grow Rich, even though that's a really good one. But the Dalai Lama did one called Happiness.
Hmm.
Um,
Tell me about that a
I
little.
so I think kind of going back to what we were just talking about, like I think in life you have two main goals, which is one, to become the absolute sharpest, deadliest arrow that you can possibly be. But an arrow, as sharp as it could be or not, without direction, is useless. So you have to know which way you're going to go. And so if you don't know how to define happiness for yourself, then you're going to do what I did and chase whatever is put in front of you and then make a judgment call on whether you like it or not. So with intentionality, you actually start to build your life around how you want it to be and then engineer the things you have to do to make that happen. So it's the difference in my world with people who plan their work year and then try to fit in vacations, or there's people who start the year with exactly where they're going to go and when they're going to go on vacation first and then plan the work around it.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, some people might say that you get to the same end goal, but the truth is you do not.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So first book is I forget the whole.
I'll get it. I'll get the full title. Don't worry, I get that.
Something happiness, I think it's the art of happiness.
Okay,
I'm
I'll get it.
almost dead sure that it's the art of happiness. So
Okay.
that's the first book I would say. Um, and then two, um, probably the most influential book of the last 15 years of my life was The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. Do you know about that one, Ridgely?
I don't.
So he wrote it, I think it's like 12 years ago. I think about 12 years ago it came out. And Ray Kurzweil was possibly still is very, very high up at Google. And he has for something close to 40 or 50 years been a technology predictor, a Nostradamus, if you will, of technology.
Mm.
And his predictions are like 92% accurate for
Wow.
for decades. Uh,
Wow.
and so when he wrote this book, I will warn the readers, it is a dense read. It is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of concepts that you may not understand or have to reread several times just to be able to get, and that's okay. But it goes central to the fact of what I was saying before, which is if you don't know where to aim, then you're useless. Doesn't matter how deadly and sharp you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, how can you better aim is to know where the target is going to be. And Ray Kurzweil details how and some of the interesting things technologically that will unearth themselves in the 2030s and 2040s. And I believe he's finished, although it's been delayed in release until next year, written a follow-up to that book. But they keep delaying it, I think, because there's so many quick developments that the book probably goes out of date real fast.
Wow. Love that.
But
Definitely.
Ray Kurzweil, it was really good. So just I think, having some idea of what's coming will be able to help shape the decisions you make and what you're going to do with them. So that's my second book.
Okay.
And then
Awesome.
and then if you want to be practical, I would say Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And if you would in fact prefer to keep it light, and because I just gave you a really deep book, I would suggest Phil Knight's Shoe Dog.
I love that one. Yeah.
Oh, so well written, very easy read, but it's a great entrepreneurial journey that I think highlights, what some of the things you might go through during this fabulous journey.
Yeah, it was super cool because my dad had this beautiful, beautiful house on the water. He was a prominent lawyer. And Phil Knight moved in right down the street. So we'd see him walking in our neighborhood on a regular basis. In Annapolis, Maryland, he had a place over there. So very nice guy, actually, really cool. He'd talk to you. He's a good dude. So
that's very cool.
All right, man. Final question. Leave us with some wisdom. The gem, the golden nugget from Shane Mahoney to the entrepreneurs of the world. What would you want to give us as we wrap this up today?
Tactical vacationing.
Say a little more, please.
Tactical vacationing. Do you want me to explain this?
Yes, please.
All right, entrepreneurs, listen up. This concept, I wish this concept was mine, but I got it from a friend. As a business owner, correct me if I'm wrong, Ridgely, your main job is to create systems and processes such that the business would work with or without you.
Yes.
Okay. If you never leave on vacation, you have no idea what will break. So step one of freeing yourself from being the slave of your own business is take a vacation. This allows you the mental space to practice this deal because this is going to be hard for you the first time. But the lesson learned is that when you come back, your team will have inevitably had made some mistakes. Your now job is to correct those mistakes, better systems, better processes. And then we go to step 3. You're going to like this. Take another vacation, see what breaks, rinse and repeat. The less things break, the more you can take vacation. And now you're living life however you want to.
I love that. The tactical vacation from Shane Mahoney, the man who makes dreams come true for so many people around the world. My brother, deeply appreciate the time. Thank you on behalf of our entire community. We really, really are grateful for what you shared with us. A lot to unpack. So team, obviously go take a look at the website below in the link. And I'd recommend listening to this a few times. There are some real gems in there that can serve you for the rest of your journey. Shane, thanks a million, man. Really appreciate it.
Very welcome.